Meeting of the Devens Jurisdiction Framework Committee. Today is Wednesday, May 14th, 2025. My name is Victor Norman. I will chair the meeting and then call the roll. Robert Pontbriand.
Here.
Ryan Sawyer.
Here.
Logan Breeze. Dan Nason.
Here.
Brian Hildebrand. Jim Geller. Neil Angus.
Here.
Bill Marshall.
Bill is not going to be able to make it. He sends his regrets.
Janice Livingston.
Here.
Odile Smith. Brian McDivitt. Christian Cullen. Susan
He's on
Murray.
maternity leave, evidently.
Kristen Cullen is on maternity leave, yes.
Okay. Susan Murray Redinger.
Yes.
Here.
John
Here.
Chatter. We have a quorum. We are in order. Minutes. We have minutes of our meeting of April 9th. Any comments? Questions? Corrections? Is there a motion to?
Just one correction, Mr. Chair, on the last page. Actually, no, sorry, on page 2. The Healy Driscoll Housing Economic Bill Working Group update. It was just a tense thing. The second last sentence says also the meeting also covers voting procedures. It should be covered. And then just the more substantive changes on the last page. The second bullet. The committee expressed concerns about the process, particularly the lack of review and approval from the full body of the DJFC. I think we should add before the chair sent the email to Chris Clutchman regarding the funding.
So where exactly would that be? What line are we on?
That would be on the first bullet on the last page, where it says full body of the DJFC. We should add, are you with me?
No, I'm
Right
not
after, right here. Right after.
on. Oh, okay.
Starts with the committee expressed concerns.
Okay.
After that sentence, it says the full body of the DJFC. I think it should say before the chair sent his email to Chris Clutchman regarding the funding. Just to clarify put it in context about what the committee was expressing concerns about. I believe it was about the email.
Yep.
Just so I want to make that.
All right, so add before, sorry, for the chair.
Go ahead.
Before the chair sent the email to,
Chris Clutchman regarding the funding. And just the last sentence in that bullet, it says they agreed to release the money to the housing working group as previously decided. I don't think we agreed to release the money. It's not our money to release. I think we should just say they agreed to not accept the funding, period. Does that make sense?
But is that what got said?
I believe that's what got said. I mean, we don't have the authority to,
so is that a motion with those changes?
with those changes, yes.
I'll second that motion with those
Okay.
edits.
Okay, on motion to approve the minutes as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Without objection, the motion passes unanimously. Stakeholder updates, Town of Air.
Mr. Chair, the Air Local Committee is in the process of scheduling another meeting for the purposes of, they've met with all of the air departments with respect to Devens and are looking to begin to frame sort of their study report, so that effort is ongoing. Also, the Air Select Board authorized and sent a letter to Secretary Howe in the same vein that I believe Harvard and Shirley did as well. And that's all I have from my end. I don't know if Selectman Livingston, anything else?
No, I think that covers it.
Okay, Town of Harvard, the Harvard Devens Jurisdiction Committee did meet on April 14th. We discussed the work of there was a report from me on the work of this committee, particularly discussed the funding situation with respect to the RFP, which was anticipated to be finalized at the next meeting, which is today's meeting. We discussed the 13th framework element, municipal finance and budget. And then with respect to the working group, Susan Mary suggested Harvard Devens Committee took a position with respect to the working group relative to prescriptive elements, particularly Vicksburg Square and Super Town Meeting. Susan Mary suggested that it would be more impactful if the letter came from the select board, so the letter from the Harvard Devens Committee was referred to the select board, and the select board did take up the matter. And that was the essence of important matters with respect to the Harvard Devens Committee. Town of Shirley.
Yeah, as Robert stated, the town of Shirley did send a letter to Secretary Howe following the lead of the letter that Harvard had sent. So that was approved by the select board and sent out a few weeks ago.
Okay. Devens, John?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No major updates. We were pleased with the progress of the Housing Working Group. We feel that the Devens Committee, as well as all committee members, have done a good job of representing their constituencies. The Devens Committee got a lot of feedback from the residents and shared that, incorporated that into the document, and we're pleased. And I guess today was the day, and it's well on its way.
Great. Devens Enterprise Commission. Neil?
No real updates aside from what else we're going to discuss on the agenda.
Okay. Okay, moving right along. Old business. The DJFC Working Group update draft RFP. Robert, do you want to kick that off?
So you have in your packet the draft RFP that the sub-working group of this committee has been working on for some time. And just for the record, that consisted of myself, the chair, Brian Sawyer from Shirley, and Neil Angus from the DEC, and Jim Geller, and I know John in the beginning as well, from the Devens representatives to work on the RFP. And one of the key things, in addition to having this RFP together, was to use this as the goal, anyway, as part of a potential strategy to get a mass development back to the table. So I appreciate everybody on the working group that worked on this, as well as the committee's patience on this. We did take the applicable components from the original RFEI and obviously retooled that into the RFP. So I don't know, Mr. Chair, if there's any key points you want to mention on that.
I think the biggest distinction between the RFEI and this document is that this document is really focused on the financial element with respect to future governance at Devens. So before we decide what to do with this document, let's discuss it and hopefully be able to take it from a draft to a final document. Any comments? John?
A few comments, Mr. Chair. So, background, 1, 2, 3, fourth line down, it should read base realignment and closure commission, rather than base closure and realignment. Those are just inverted. Just a grammatical thing. Do we need to say in the, okay, we got that?
No, first.
Yep.
Your background?
Yeah, so under background, 1, 2, 3,
Oh.
4.
Yep.
Yeah, it's supposed to be
Base
BRAC.
realignment and closure.
Yeah, so it was BRAC,
BRAC.
base realignment.
Just a small correction. And then, second to last sentence under background, as a result, residents vote in the underlying town in which they reside, but not on matters pertaining to the DREC. Is that necessary? It's on the page 1.
Mhm.
Wait, I'm not
Oh,
planning
the
anyway.
last sentence under background.
The whole last sentence or just
Yeah.
the last part of it?
As a result, residents vote in underlying town in which they reside, but not on matters pertaining to the DRES.
What's the
I'm not
concern of
talking about-
including it?
Hmm?
What's your concern on including it?
What value does it bring?
What? What value does it bring?
Oh. Kind of the unique nature of Devens, but
What,
I
yeah.
don't have a strong opinion one way or the other, but it does
Hmm.
kind of lay out that Devens is different.
It's citing that you're able to tax them, but on the other hand, they're not voting particularly in that realm, right? So they don't vote on the taxes. I think that's the point that I've heard expressed, at least at our meetings, that we want to make sure it's known that people don't get to vote on what is being decided necessarily. That's all. If it's not important to the RFP, then I don't think you need to include it, but I think that's why it's in there to begin with.
And that's the question, is it important to do it?
I don't see it real.
Yeah.
Okay, so, strike?
Maybe it should be converted into 2 sentences instead of 1. As a result, residents vote in underlying town in which they reside. And then if you wanted to make the point, they do not vote on matters related to the enterprise. Do we need that?
I don't think we do.
I think anyone who gets into this will quickly see that.
Yeah, they'll figure it out.
How about if we just put a period after reside and just strike the rest of it?
That's fine.
John, does that work? Neil, is that?
I don't have a,
Yeah.
I think we would just need to clarify that it's Devens residents. Right? I don't think we talk about,
I think that's covered
Is that-
already.
assumed,
I think that's
as a result,
covered right in
Devens
here.
residents vote.
Just yeah,
in
okay.
town.
Yep. That clears it up.
Thank you. Chapter 498, so, I'm sorry, I'm still going here. Okay, it says Devens jurisdiction, so 1, 2, 3, third paragraph,
Mhm.
third sentence, mass development and the Devens Enterprise Commission and Devens. It should say Devens residents and businesses. A little more clarity for whoever's gonna be. What do you think? Make sense?
Where's that? Which
Third line, right?
So, and
On third paragraph?
Yeah, the Devens
the
jurisdiction.
Devens, Everence, and Devens, it should be Devens residents and businesses right there.
Okay. Everyone okay with that?
Yep.
Should have brought the Word document. We could worked on it right here in real time.
So page 4, paragraph 8, line 3, that link is dead. Devens reuse plan, www.devens, that link does not work, so that there must be another link that works.
Devens reuse plan link is dead, this
I
one.
think it might be, bear with me, I can give it to you now, or you can,
No, we can look it up.
yeah, that's fine.
But yeah, we'll update.
And then my final comment, page 5, should RFI read RFP, just,
Yep.
is that accurate? Can
Yeah.
RFP amendments made to this RFI, or should it read RFP?
RFP.
Where's that? I'm sorry.
Under RFP
In both
amendments
locations?
on the
Yep.
last
Yes.
Yeah, everything that says RFI should be RFP.
And that, we're good?
last page. Like that. And then there's a paragraph here, it talks about RFI. And there's a couple places where it says RFI.
Okay. Anything else?
Just a question, on the evaluation and selection process, we kind of left that TBD. I think there's some other elements that might be TBD as part of this when we are ready to release it. But this is a pretty important section for the respondents, I think, so we do have to work this out at some other point. But I'm fine with it the way it is now, as long as we have a chance to revisit this before we release.
Yeah, I think that's the expectation. I think if the funding does come along and we do have an opportunity to actually use this, then I would expect that we would go through it one more time before we actually
Right.
release it publicly.
Okay. Good. I think for the purposes of now and getting this into the letter and to Chris Kletchman and to Mass Development.
Okay.
Good.
What's the pleasure of the board?
So this isn't going out as an RFP, it's just going to inclusion in the,
Right now,
Say this stays as a draft.
yes,
We've approved.
so this would secure the funding, this would help secure the funding, the usage of the funding, or what?
This is kind of like the template, I think, to, once we find out if funding becomes available, we're gonna use this template, we're gonna build off of this template and submit it for future funding.
Okay, because today Chris made it sound like there was money already allocated, no?
There is money that was allocated to the DJFC through the town of Air and the Devens Enterprise Commission, which is the money that the DJFC, thank you, but no thank you'd. But so the working group is looking at the possibility of using that money for some of those studies that were mentioned in the report.
Okay, gotcha,
So it's a separate
issue.
RFP. If another grant proposal or opportunity comes out, I think that's our intent, right? Is
sure. Yep.
this. Use this framework to apply for that grant funding.
So do we want to approve this as a draft document? Or how would we characterize it? It's
Approve draft 1 as amended?
it's like an RFP on the shelf.
Yeah.
And then we're waiting for an opportunity to use it.
And we'll have to
So
customize
how should we characterize this?
Mr. Chair, I think as Selectman Livingston said, may make a motion to approve draft 1 of the RFP as amended, so it captures the as amended, and we start there. So then it's an approved draft, which can be used in the letter to Chris Kletchman, and also, if it's the will of the committee, also as reference to Mass Development about them coming back to the table.
Yeah.
So it'd be an approved draft, and I mean, because from my perspective, it's there. I think the last two pieces, which are not necessary for this initial purposes, Neil mentioned, is the evaluation piece, which we can add, and the contact information.
Okay.
But I think substantively, it's ready to go.
Is everybody good with that concept?
So I would make a motion that the Framework Committee vote to approve draft 1 of the RFP as amended.
Seconded.
A second. Any further discussion? I'd like to call a roll on that. Okay, on the motion to approve RFP draft 1 as amended, Susan Mary Redinger,
Aye.
Dan Nason,
Aye.
Robert Pontbriand,
Aye.
John Catter,
Aye.
Neil Angus,
Aye.
Brian Sawyer, Janice Livingston.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. The motion is approved unanimously. Okay, so we have a good piece of work here, I think. Now, the next item on the agenda is a letter to Chris Kletchman. You've received a draft letter which has not been sent to Chris Kletchman. Robert?
I was just going to say, Mr. Chair, thank you for putting the draft together. I think that it reflects the intent of the committee, and now with the approval of the draft RFP to be attached, I think it'll be useful correspondence to Ms. Kletchman for future funding that's applicable to the RFP. I don't, from my perspective, I don't see any changes.
I have well, your last line where you have attached as an RFP, you have it in parentheses.
Hmm.
That doesn't look right.
Okay. Well, I guess the only reason I did that is because in the body of the letter, it doesn't build up to that.
Couldn't, well, but putting it in parentheses, like all by itself,
Okay.
just,
Hmm.
how about, please see attached,
For future reference.
yeah,
something like that.
yeah, tweak that and remove those parentheses.
Okay.
It almost looks like, and then I was thinking, and I'm just gonna throw that out there, so.
I think you could say to, at the end of the third paragraph, to that end, we have included a draft RFP that would be ready to use for future funding if it's available. You say, since they're presently engaged in planning for future housing development, you could add it there, just saying to that end,
Okay. Yes.
please find an RFP.
Yep.
Approved by the working group. Chair, question to the town of Ayer, has the select board approved the sort of reusing of the grant?
So just through the chair, so go back to last summer, this committee authorized the application for the grant funding. And as you probably know and can appreciate, there had to be a community entity. So the town of Ayer volunteered, because at the time our economic development director did the grant application as sort of the sponsor committee, but that was just for the mechanics of the grant. So it ended up being Ayer and the DEC as sort of the administrative entity.
Yeah.
So whatever the will of this committee is with respect to the funding is sufficient.
Okay.
So, but I understand what you're saying. In a normal grant role, the select board.
Just making sure the parties that got the money are aligned with our sort of now saying, no, you should go this way.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. No, fair question.
All right.
But that original grant application identified two funding sources. And one was related to housing, and the second one, which is listed here, is a community planning grant. And I think that's more appropriate for what we're doing. Even though there's somewhat of a housing element, it's more community planning than it is housing. And I think that was the direction that Chris Clutchman was focused on when she identified this and said, oh, this is a perfect match between this housing working group and these funds. And I suspect that if she agrees that mass development is more appropriate to do this work, that they will just redo the grant award and take out Town of Ayer and the Enterprise Commission and just make it a grant to mass development. But that's up to them.
Not a little funky giving a grant to a municipal entity like that. I mean, they already are funded.
Based on what I think they're looking at for the grant, which would be kind of a regional school needs assessment, would be, I think, the first thing they'd be looking at. It may be more appropriate to involve Ayer, Harvard, and Shirley. So,
Yeah.
well, it's up to them. It's up to
really.
them. That's
Yeah.
beyond our. And to that point, I was going to suggest, I think the idea behind this letter was to, thank you for the funding. We think we wanted to utilize it for these purposes. We realize that, you've got other ideas. But here's our RFP. We look forward to working with you to, if additional funding becomes available. So I wonder if even the third paragraph in this that starts out, however, is that paragraph even needed as part of this letter?
Are you suggesting striking that paragraph?
I would suggest striking that paragraph and just saying, I would actually look at editing the first part of the letter just to say, on behalf of the DJFC, thank you for the grant funding recently awarded to the Devens Enterprise Commission and the town of Air. Just to kind of have a nice open intro. I mean, we don't want to burn any bridges with executive office, so I think we should, I think it would just be nice to have a nice intro instead of jumping right into it. So on behalf of the DJFC, thank you for the grant funding recently awarded would be my suggested edit to that first sentence. And ending that paragraph at the DJFC in brackets, and then just say the DJFC intended these funds to be used for a data-driven planning process, so that they understand the intent of it. And then just jumping into attached is the RFP, including a scope of work drafted by the DEC, or the DJFC, sorry. But I would add to that, expanding on that, saying this is outlining the information we are interested in gathering to assist mass development, the DEC, and the communities of Air, Devens, Harvard, and Shirley with the disposition process. I think if we put it in that context, it gives a little more context to what the RFP is for. I know that's a lot. I can share these proposed edits with you if you'd like, but it's not changing the form or context of the letter. I think it's just expanding on what we're asking.
Okay, yeah, I understand the sentiment, and I agree that I'd like to believe that they would consider us for future funding.
Yeah, and then just use the second last paragraph before attaches the RFP, just use that as your closing sentence to say, we look forward to working with your office to consider future grant funding under the Community Planning Grants Program or any other potential funding sources that may exist.
Okay.
It's a lot, I know.
No, that's okay. We can deal with it. So I'm going to ask you, Neil, to craft a letter with the sentiments you expressed, unless anyone has any real objections.
I can do a red line of this letter if you'd like and
get it to me.
Share it with you.
Get it to me, and I will send it to the members for if that's what we want to handle this. I'll send it to the members, and if anybody has any further objections, we'll recirculate it. If it gets really cumbersome, we'll put it on the agenda for our next meeting. But if everyone likes what Neil has done to this letter,
It makes sense.
then I will send it out.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay, so we can probably get it out in a week or so. Is that okay, Neil? Are you?
I'm fine with that. Just,
okay.
We're not voting on something via email, though, right? I mean, just want to respect open meeting.
Right.
Sorry, I apologize. I am new, so I'm asking questions that probably you all don't have. But the intent of this is, thank you so much for the money. We asked for it to do this. We now see you want to do this with it. We're aligned on that, so great, go do that. But we'd like more money in the future to do X, Y, and Z.
Exactly.
Essentially,
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
But the
Oh,
part,
that's a great summary.
pretty good, yeah. The part you're missing is that we were so excited about receiving these funds, and we put a lot of work into this RFP, and then some of us felt like the rug was pulled out from under us, and the funds diverted to another purpose. And so some of us I got really incensed over it and overreacted. And
We did a cleansing with sage.
Yeah.
You know.
Because that directive came from Secretary Division or
right, the
Clutchman's
fund, Chris
division
Clutchman.
says you have that money, but we now need it to use
Right.
this, or you have to use it this way.
That's right.
Which one? We want it back to use it on this?
No.
Or you can have it,
Sure.
but you gotta
No,
use
the
it this way.
intent was for housing-related issues, and
So they said,
we were focused on finance.
got it.
And they said, no, it needs to be used for housing. We in turn said, no, we're not a housing committee, so
That part I
thank thank
got.
you, but no thank you.
Okay, got it. Okay.
So I wrote a poorly crafted letter that really burned a lot of bridges, and it was Jim Geller who actually talked me off the ledge
Okay, gotcha.
during the meeting, and as a result, we've got a much softer touch.
Okay, got it. Okay.
That hopefully will result in money to carry out our mission. Okay, so that's the plan.
So wait a minute, let me just make sure I understand the plan.
He's gonna redline the letter. It's gonna get sent to everybody so we can at least see it, but it's not going out until we all come back next month and then say yay or nay, right? How are we doing this? Cause if we, are we saying we are approving even though we haven't seen the exact wording on a piece of paper?
No, I don't think we should approve anything.
That's what
right
I'm
now.
saying, so he can send it to us, we can all look at it in advance to the meeting, and that way anybody have any questions, they can bring it forward, right?
Unless everyone's fine with the letter.
Well, that's the thing, if
mean,
if there's a concern about us saying yay or nay via an
Then
email,
you can't.
then
you
we
do
can't.
that.
So, but what I'm saying is, so he can redline it, we'll get it out to everybody, we can get it out the moment he redlines it, or it can be a part of the packet, it'll still be a part of the packet. But we're not doing the formal approval until June is next month.
Well, that's what I'm suggesting. Neil's edits really have done violence to this letter.
Violence? What?
Violence, but
Violence was unintentional.
no, violence.
Trying to be
Right.
constructive.
Is that why you came early?
In a grammatical, thematic way, not substantial. So I think if Neil were to rewrite this letter, it doesn't have to be red line. I think red line I guess what I'm trying to avoid is having 8 different people making changes to a document floating back and forth. And that's why I just suggesting that if Neil sends a letter to me, then I can send it out for comments to be returned to me, so that we're not doing, so if somebody has a minor comment,
8 different
grammatical
versions.
comment or spelling or something, I can correct it. And then if everyone is good with that copy, then that letter can go out. If there are major concerns about it, then we'll put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
I think you can go back out. I think if we're aligned on the
Got it.
intent, right, we authorize Neil to write it, he sends it to you.
Yep.
You could send it out to us, but we could also authorize you to make amends as needed, you to work it out. We've aligned on the intent, and then it goes off. Otherwise, we're gonna delay this by a month,
That's the point.
so.
Janice, you uncomfortable with that? The only reason would be to get it out there, rather than waiting another month.
The only
For
reason I
months.
bring this up, and I don't like the back and forth either, but I want to ensure we kind of we rushed to judgment early on. I think we need to be a little more thoughtful in our response this time around. That's my only purpose of making these edits.
Yep.
Fair.
Agreed.
So I move that we authorize Neil to rework the letter based on the intent that we've agreed to at this table, and have him send it to the chair, and we authorize the chair then to send the letter off.
Seconded.
Okay. Okay. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Without objection, the motion passes unanimously. Okay. What's not on the agenda is something that usually appears.
You approved
No,
the agenda
Absolutely.
as it is.
Yes.
So what is you about to say is missing?
It's just that Mass Development Update is usually on there.
And I said to you in my email, is this needed? And we could have amended the agenda at the beginning of the meeting, and you said it looks good. And so I went with it and took it off. So I could have fixed it,
I know.
could have amended it Do you have an update from it?
Well, the only, no, except that we had thought that, and this can certainly wait another month, it's not critical, that we would use this RFP as a way to hopefully re-engage mass development with this committee.
Right, you said that earlier, so yeah. So.
Draft another letter for consideration for the next meeting.
Well, I guess,
Here it is, here's what we sent, you know.
yeah, what I had done for many, many months, years, actually, before each meeting is to reach out to mass development and say, you know, that, you know, would you like to come to our meeting, and have been routinely ignored by mass development. So what's the pleasure of the board? Do we want to send a re-engagement letter now, or do you want to wait a month and think about how we want to do that?
Could you just, in your sort of chairmanship, send here, FYI, here's an RFP draft that the Devens Framework Committee approved, and then we could agree on the letter the next time.
Yep.
If we want to follow it up with.
Or do you want to add a copy to mass development on the letter you're sending?
That would
As
be
an
good.
FYI, just like we're doing with Jamie and them.
On the one that we just approved them to write.
Okay. How do we feel about things? I just have to say this. I've met Najit and interacted with her as via the housing working group. And I get a better feeling from her than I did from Yvonne Howe. I don't know, maybe I'm just clutching at straws, but.
So, Mr. Chair, I think there are two ways that the committee could approach this. So the whole thrust of why the RFP is the linchpin to get mass development back to the table is when you obviously read the RFP without mass development's active involvement, it's an uphill battle, right? So one option would be, option one would be to send a communication to mass development that this is the RFP, and we need mass development to be actively involved, et cetera, et cetera. I'd be happy to work on language for that and send it. The second option would be to prepare, and there's a chance, after the Kletchman letter, which has been approved, goes out, there is a chance that perhaps there is some funding for this RFP. And so option two would be to do the same thing to mass development, but do it in June after, if we see if we have any funding. So option one is, here's the RFP, this is what we'd like to do, we need you at the table, and that's fine. Option two, if the committee doesn't want to wait a month, option two would be by June, when we meet, hopefully we will have heard back from Kletchman, and if there was funding, it would give it more teeth.
I think we should wait till June.
So what if we, in terms of order of operations, we send the Kletchman letter as we've just voted?
Yep.
And then for the June meeting on the agenda, have a draft and a discussion with a letter to mass development to come back to the table based on the RFP project.
Okay.
That's what I propose, but.
Okay,
Mr.
thoughts?
Chair, is it likely to, you're talking about money moving fairly quickly
Yeah.
there. Is that at all likely?
You're absolutely correct. It's a very short timeline. The only thing I'm holding out, as Neil knows, when we talked with Chris Kletchman, she indicated that there were other funding sources from the state that would be applicable to this project. It is a stretch, but
Okay.
But I'm just
knew
thinking, if
something.
I'm mass development and we come forward with, look, here's our RFP, we're ready to do this, here's the funding, let's go, you know, as opposed to if we go, reach out to mass development, here's our RFP, but we don't have any funding yet, well, let us know when you have funding. I don't know, either way,
Okay.
I think for June would be fair.
Okay, I understand your perspective now. Well, how do we make this RFP more impactful to mass development? That would cause them to say, let's re-engage with the framework committee. And over the next month, we may get some kind of feedback from Chris Clutchman.
Yeah.
That says we'd be happy to entertain another grant, or it's just something to provide a little bit of encouragement that allows us to say to mass development, we're hopeful that funding will be available to execute this RFP. So if by adding, if there is a glimmer of hope that we will get funding from Chris Clutchman, then mass development may say, we better get involved in this, because this is a pretty big deal if this RFP actually gets funded.
That was my thinking.
Okay.
I don't think I don't know what the appeal to them would be to engage without some funding. I mean, they'll continue to operate as is, no?
Yeah, sure. And I wasn't at the meeting, but I think, Robert, you were with Chair Yvonne Howe, where this committee was encouraged to submit a grant application.
That was last year,
Yeah.
And Jamie and others reached out and said, you guys ought to submit a grant application.
Correct.
And that was, as a result of that, it was an 11th hour effort by the town of Air to craft an application, and we did get funded. So, you know, that kind of, who knows, that kind of encouragement may still be forthcoming. Because the letter to Clutchman does copy because they were involved does copy the legislative delegation because they were involved in encouraging application for the grant. So Jamie or Cronin may reach out to Chris Clutchman and say, look, you know, can we encourage these people to apply again, or
Right.
just so we can, as I said, just trying to put something in that letter that make mass development think this is an opportunity for us to get involved, or we need to get involved in it.
Yes. So, Mr. Chair, what I would propose then is we have a plan on the Clutchman letter. So what I would propose is for the June meeting, we prepare, and I'd be happy to work with whoever on that, so I'm not just saying it. For June, we have a draft letter prepared for mass development. We'll call it the re-engagement letter. We'll have that draft ready, and hopefully, to the selectman's point, there's a very small window. Maybe we'll have some clarity on funding, which would only help. And if we don't, I think we'll be in a position in June to move forward.
Okay.
I think that's fair. And to your point, I know I have talked to Senator Eldridge on other matters. I mean, he's aware of what's happening. He's very supportive, meaning that the grant we got, that funding is going to go to a different aspect of the Devens question, right? And that we would like funding for this RFP. So I'm sure, not to speak for the senator and the delegation, that they'd be supportive.
Who's going to work with Robert to draft that letter?
I can work with him, but I don't know if you, I'm a little late to the party here, but I can happy to help him.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, perfect.
All right.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so we'll hold that, the communication with mass development in advance. until the next meeting, and it will be on the agenda.
Yes. Say yes then.
Okay, question 13, moving right along under new business, municipal finance and budget. Town of Air, is that? Okay.
Yep.
Town of Air.
And Mr. Chair, I just want to thank Selectman Livingston for putting this together on behalf of the town of Air. Thank you.
Welcome, yeah. Without having
Yes.
something special. So basically what it is here is, I'm not gonna read it, it's that if the decision is made that jurisdiction is returned to, the historical property line for Air is returned to Air, we know that there would be a transition period. Nothing happens overnight. In my head, I'm thinking it's gonna be a minimum of a 3-year transition. Don't know why, but that number comes to my head. But anyways, so once that happens, the moment the word comes out, then everyone starts to work as far as doing an assessment of all the residential and commercial property that would be in the historical Town of Air line, and then slowly try to incorporate that into the Town of Air's finances budget. So it would start as a separate budget line item, just to get everyone kind of acclimated as they could see as it sort of merged in. And through that, we would also look at other activities that are funded, such as aid to education and Chapter 90 funds. And then the Town of Air departments and the Finance Committee would do their reviewing, assessing, combining budgets, and as things are straightened out, there would be an article on the town warrant for town meeting to be approved. It could either happen, piece by piece, or it could be one town meeting with everything that needed to bring Devens back into the Town of Air. So.
Do you have an outside firm that does your assessments? What's the firm that Harvard uses? I can't remember the name.
Oh, I don't know.
Which is the same firm that Devens uses. I don't know if anybody remembers it. I think he sold the company, actually.
Yeah, it's,
Is it the assessor?
We use them too.
Manzello.
You do? Okay,
Yeah,
so
I'm
that's,
drawing a blank.
And,
And, yeah.
I just don't know the name of the company.
Yeah, so Harvard Devens Air uses the same professional assessment.
Okay.
And why are we drawing a blank?
I don't know.
I am too, I think.
Yeah.
Must be listed on the town website.
Anyway, the point is that we'd all be working from the same page, that the valuations on property, commercial and industrial property, would all be the same. In theory, full and fair value exists throughout the Commonwealth, but the process of assessing the property, it would be just a matter of using existing information.
True, but I think what I was saying in mine is reassuring everyone that this is an open process.
Right. Okay.
RRG Systems.
Yes. RRG Systems is the name. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, any questions for Air? Okay, Harvard. I think just working from detailed financial information, which presumably would be the stuff of the RFP that we've talked about. I think the biggest challenge that I identified in the commentary here is again work of that's contained within the RFP is to look at what's left of the redevelopment function and making sure that the funds are there to complete that activity. And then that Chapter 498 does say that if there's any surplus funds at the end of the project, then they get divided amongst the towns. So that only comes to bear with respect to preparing a budget that encompasses Devens, that the redevelopment functions remaining to be completed would have to be funded in some fashion. And that could be a budget item for the towns. Is that clear? Right now, Mass Development has direct access to the tax base. So they use land sale revenue, lease revenue, and tax revenue to fund their operations. At the end of the day, they would no longer have direct access to the tax base. They'd still have land sale revenue and lease revenue. And if they needed more money, they would come back to the municipalities, as every redevelopment authority across the Commonwealth does, and says, we need funding to complete our work. You need to provide that in your budget.
That the three towns would have to provide it?
Yes. Theoretically, that could happen.
No, state can continue giving
state-
them the money.
State
'Cause-
already-
no, the state
Initial
takes.
200 million.
Okay. Yeah, I suspect.
I can tell you town meeting would go no.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully the balance sheet would be adequate to complete the redevelopment project.
Do you have debt on here, debt service too? I mean, that all has to be figured out, wouldn't it? Is that part of this?
That's an interesting question. That would be only, well, except for utilities, which is a whole separate financial structure. Mass Development, in my understanding, has not incurred any debt beyond 2033, except for the public safety building. I don't know what the term of that debt is. So if that term extends beyond the establishment of permanent governance, then the towns would have to pick up that debt.
Or
Because
they can pay it off before they leave.
Yeah, they're gonna have, yeah, exactly,
That would-
because,
right.
no, why should we pay somebody else's debt?
That's a good question.
So, I mean, again, I don't think town meeting would go for that.
No, these are all the things that need to be worked out as
That's
part
right.
of disposition. Nobody's saying the
Right.
town's
Yeah.
going to cover that.
Right.
It's
The
a
only-
disposition question.
The only issue raised here is that would be a question that would get raised at the point of determining jurisdiction. I think that the two, I've always seen it as like two functions. One is to make decisions with respect to permanent government, and the other is to make a plan for transition. And the transition would deal with things like outstanding debt.
I think it's important too to remember that this matrix was developed not just to come up with ideas, but also to come up with questions. And these sounds like these are questions that we should be preparing to ask a consultant when they do come on board. These are the debt service issues, the taxation,
Also would include if there's a capital plan, what is the maintenance of any buildings that will revert to municipal use?
right?
So understanding those.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So the question is just how does the uniqueness of Devens, those aspects of Devens that are different, work with the existing budgeting process for the three towns? For Devens as a town, it becomes they still have to deal with those issues.
Yep.
That will still be a factor. Okay. Anyway, so budgeting, with the issues were raised here. Go into the matrix. Shirley.
Yes, currently, in general, referring to our operating budget, that is approved at annual town meeting. And it's mainly funded through local property taxes, which is typical of a local municipality. However, there are other funding sources such as local receipts, state aid, or other available funds. And that's how we fund are, the services that the town provides. And if we were to receive the historic boundaries, we would kind of follow that same process of any property taxes derived from those lands from Devens or state funds, etc. That's how we would fund any services, and we'd have to assess, services, capital, things of that nature. So.
I think the big issue for Shirley will be looking for a pilot, a payment in lieu of taxes for the wastewater treatment plant, which is in Shirley. It provides services to the entire enterprise zone. Okay, John, from Devens as a town.
So not much more to add than what you see. It's sort of similar to the other metrics that we put together. We would stand up a municipality as necessary and leverage Massachusetts Commonwealth services that are available to assist, and with the goal of ensuring a lean organization that controls costs and maximizes efficiencies.
Okay, all good stuff. Okay, Neil, status quo.
So I just laid out the sections of Chapter 498 that deal with taxation and finance, between the Mass Development and the Devens Enterprise Commission. Well, Mass Development is the tax collector, so they, generate all the funds. We do get a small percentage of those, that tax revenue to fund our operations. But Mass Development, is responsible for setting the municipal budget for the operations of Devens, and they set the tax rates. The Devens Enterprise Commission is, generally self-sufficient on, permitting fees is where we get our funding from. So that's what I've laid out.
Well, I went to Chapter 498 and looked at Section 4, the debt obligation. It is dense. I mean, the original $200 million was I assume that's what is referenced there?
Yes.
My understanding, there was not all of that was debt. There was $80 million of that was an appropriation, and $120 million was debt. Who knows?
Not me. Not I.
And also the funds that are in Mass Development's annual budget that go to the deck, I don't know where they are in that budget.
It's not their annual funds, it's their taxation. We get 2% of their taxes for that they take in a year.
Right,
so.
but that number is in their budget. On the income side.
The 2%?
No, the total amount that they collect from property tax.
Oh.
And 2% of that goes to the deck.
Yes.
Right. But I don't know where that is in the. Anyway, this goes back to. Somebody's gonna have to unwind all that.
I did put an asterisk again, as I have with most of the matrix ones that I haven't reviewed this or vetted this with Mass Development, so this is all my it's the Devens Enterprise Commission information as we see it. So
The deck expenses, are those listed in a budget that's available? Is it?
yeah, our budget is online. Yep. Our FY26 will be online this week.
Great, okay.
But yeah, the current approved budget is online on our website.
There's some similarities between the deck and Devens Utilities in that they're self-supporting, if you will. That the utilities function, all their expenses and revenues are kept in a separate pot, and the deck is as well.
How often does Mass Development need to replenish the 250 cash balance? Is that annually, or is it, you've been healthy?
That's only if we drop below a certain threshold, and we have not dropped below that threshold since I've been here, so
I don't think that,
You're,
18 years.
you're self-sufficient.
I don't think that was ever triggered.
I think it was in the past before 2006, maybe. It might have once or twice, maybe once, but.
But it was, as I recall, back in the day, it was the Bill Marshall was a brilliant negotiator. He told Master, if you don't fund us, we're going to send our own tax bill out.
Well, Chapter 498 gives authority to
Do
the
just
DEC
that, yeah.
and Mass Development to
Yeah.
collect taxes, and that's the last thing anybody wanted to do was have two tax collectors.
Bill Marshall wanted to do it, or so he
As
said.
you said, he's
or
a
so
good
he said.
negotiator.
Yeah. Okay, moving right along. Public comment. Okay, good. Items for next meeting, in addition to the Mass Development update. Question 14, taxation. That will be interesting because currently Devens has a split rate, commercial and residential, and Air does as well, but Harvard does not.
Kill our orchards. Come
Yeah,
on.
so that will be interesting to see how what we can come up with to deal with that. So that's 14. There are 19, so we're coming to the end of our work on this matrix. Okay, any other business? Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second?
Robert? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Without objection, the motion passes unanimously.